Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Young Urban Moms. We are happy to have you here with us today. I don't know why I'm sounding like a,
That's why
I
I
don't know,
almost cracked
like a
up.
therapist. I know. I'm just trying to make y'all laugh, okay? Um,
She always starts with, "Hey
I
guys."
do. And I will continue forever because y'all make fun of me. So, anyway, hey guys. So today we have Carol here in the
Hey.
house and we have her homegirl Mino.
Yes.
Mino.
Mino.
Yes.
Uptown.
Okay. I'm going to probably ruin that name for the rest of the show, but it's okay. You know I mean well. So Mino, I know that you are a executive director, founder of PTP,
That's
which
right.
I already forgot
People's
what it
Theaters
stands for.
Project. Your memory, what is wrong with
I don't
you
know.
today?
I like in acronym stuff to like gang shit, so I'm like PTP. But go ahead. So tell us about PTP and how you came to start it.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course.
So, yes, I co founded People's Theater Project, PTP, you and me.
Oh, see, look, I knew I was
But yeah,
going
they're
somewhere
totally,
with
yeah,
that.
totally.
Do you
We
guys
love
have
the
like
acronym.
hand signals with that, or no?
No.
No,
no.
no hand signals.
No.
People's Theater Project is a theater and social justice organization rooted uptown in the Heights, Washington Heights and Inwood.
Uptown.
Uptown in the house
Yes.
for sure. And we create theater with and for the immigrant community. So we're immigrant-led organization. Two Latina women are leaders of the organization. I'm from Dominican Republic, and our artistic director is Mexicana. We do programs with children starting at age 5
Wow.
and all the way up until one of our eldest actors is 80, Doña Carmen from 174th Street.
Oh.
I love her.
Yeah, who Carolina knows. All of the plays that we create are about our own stories and our community and our issues. So we do ensemble-based theater, which is created. We don't have a playwright who comes. It's not a playwright-driven process. It is beautiful theater and storytelling, but it's created by the group that's in the room. So whether it's our programs that we do in partnerships with 14 local schools, at the end of every one of those programs, they do a little play about culture. That one is really about kind of introduction to theater, celebrating culture. Where am I from? What is my heritage? Who am I? And they create a
Wow.
piece about that. Or we have it's the theater that happens in our academy. We have an academy for leadership, theater, and activism in Inwood for immigrant youth and youth of color, and that's a multi-year program, scholarship-based and audition-based.
Wow.
That after 3 years of planning for it and after 9 years of doing public programs that Lulu was part of,
Yes.
this academy model started, that it's a really scaffolded curriculum. So year 3, so we're kind of breaking down what we were doing in a year or like in a semester kind of program, but really not just one day on race, but like a full year, really deep down. What is the history of race? How are we undoing racism? How does that
Wow.
impact us as people of color, right? Year 4 is immigration, but it starts with the self, right? So year 1 is identity. Who am I? What are my dreams? What am I capable of? How am I empowered? And year 2 is community. And then it continues growing so that by the end of the 5-6 years of the academy, for us, it's really about creating these brave spaces for these young leaders to thrive, to have the language and the skills to be the leaders of not tomorrow, but today, and really be knowing about the issues that are important to them and doing a creative action project. So that's kind of the culminating piece. They do a personal manifesto. So every single student who graduates from our academy will be kind of writing that, which times perfectly. They'll be 11th graders, so they'll be working on college essays.
Oh,
Those
wow.
of them who are choosing that path of like, what is their personal manifesto as an artist, as a leader, as a creator, and as an activist. And then kind of working with their peers and cohort to create an action, a political, creative action in their community or beyond.
That's dope.
And then the last thing we have is I know it's a lot of things. We have our school, we have our academy, but then the newest of our programs that are super excited about is our PTP company. So it's a professional company of established immigrant artists. And in the last couple of years, we've been intentional about expanding what immigrant looks like at PTP. It used to be pretty Latino, pretty Dominican heavy, and it still is proudly. But we now have artists and immigrant artists in our company that is creating these shows that tour across New York City from Iran, from China, from Nigeria, from Colombia, from Chile. So it's expanded the conversation, and it's also really brought us together of, my issues that that I think are pretty uniquely Dominican actually completely resonate with my friend and colleague and artist who's from Iran, which is a completely different experience, or from China, or Korea. So we've really expanded the conversation artistically, and we've seen that it resonates with our audiences when we go.
So there's so much to dive into with this. But
and I'm a mommy. También.
Right. I was going to say, so you are a yum of two. You have a daughter and a son. 4 and 6.
4 and 6.
I reversed that.
3 and 6, actually.
Okay.
So I can't wait till he's 4.
Yeah.
We'll be,
we'll
be
a
done
little
with the
bit more manageable.
Yes.
Yeah. So what made you start PTP? And did you start it before or after you became a mom yourself? A yum yourself. Let's not get twisted.
Yes, I'm going to focus on the
Yeah.
I'm getting up there.
Yeah.
Definitely started it before I had kids. It was born out of my thesis, actually. I was doing a master's in peace studies and conflict transformation.
Wow.
Super hippie coming in here now.
Yeah.
I'm an artist and an activist and a teacher. And these were kind of 3 things that I had siloed in my life. I grew up in Dominican Republic. I came here to school to the U.S. for college, and then kind of started doing theater. Did that for a hot second. That whole artist, theater, waiter, table life, and pretty quickly knew that was not my thing. I went to like one audition, and they were looking for Latina. Bubbly Latinas, and I was there, and there were many, and I was like, what? It's like a cattle. It just was not for me.
Right.
And I admire all the artists and actors who do that work. I did one and done. And I was like, okay, and let's see. So I'll focus on education. I'll focus on creating and directing. I love directing. But I realized I needed a bit more, so I did this program, which was amazing, in really peace studies and looking how, with the passions that you do, can you really build a peace in the world?
Right.
And in the world starts in your block and in your hood and keeps expanding.
For sure.
So PTP was born out of kind of me combining my passions for all of the things that were important in my life that I saw as valuable as something that I could do, and it was a project of theater should be accessible for all. It's one of the human rights. We should have access to it, and not only to see it, but to be part of it and creating it.
Yeah.
And then became a whole nonprofit.
That's great. So activism starts in your hood, you said, right? And I want to kind of dive even closer into in your home, right? Like, I know your kids are still pretty small right now, but how are you teaching them about issues of social justice and activism? I'm curious, like, or are you?
Yeah. I mean, it kind of also, because you do that, it feels like not just with your kids, but other kids as well. Like, you work very closely with Lulu, and Lulu to this day my daughter is like an activist in every sense of the way. So, yeah, I mean, where did that sort of, like Mary
come
said,
from? How do you incorporate that?
Yeah.
I think I love working with kids. I love children, and then having my own is just a great opportunity to put into practice because they're there all the time, not just once a week or twice a week.
Right.
So I think it's really having rich, deep conversations, and also knowing, because they're young, not to go too deep. So my daughter knows immigrant rights are important issues that myself as an immigrant we really tackle. We've spoken about, and really, she's gone to many marches and protests, and she knows that it is her, as a woman, now as a girl,
right.
As a girl,
as woman in training,
woman in training, woman in process,
yeah.
But as a girl, and as a Dominicana and as a daughter of an immigrant, what are some things that she may encounter, but also using her light skin privilege, because her father is white and she very much is white passing. So we've had conversation about how do myself as a light skin,
right?
But she's like, "Pero mami, you're a little marroncita, right?" Compared to her, which is absolutely true. But I was like, "Yeah, how are we intentional about that?" So we've had a lot of conversations about just being aware of where are you placed in all the different identities you may have. But she wrote this amazing paper the other day, and she's like, something you may know about me. And I was very lucky that for the first 2 years of her elementary, she was in a very social justice progressive school. So it guided a lot of what she was having at home. So it kind of bounced back.
Yeah.
And one of the things that she worked on, which I love, was something you may know by looking at me is that I have curly hair. And then the second part was like, something you may not know about me. She's like, is that I am Dominican.
Right.
You know, and
right.
that's a very integral part of who she is. Like
Yeah.
this week, she just told me this morning, that some of the kids were teasing her because she had rice and beans in her lunchbox.
Wow.
And I was like, pero everyone's Latino in your classroom. Like, why are they making fun of arroz con habichuela? You know, like that was just, but she's like, but I said, it's delicious. And that's what we eat at home, you know?
Yeah.
But it's really about how do you speak up for yourself? And we've had those conversations. And how do you use the privilege that you do have?
Yeah.
And of course, every single book that we own features people of color and is very like women powered and girl power. And Malala is her favorite person. And
that's
she's,
great.
you know, she knows like Harriet Tubman's history very integrally in her life. And, you know, so it's really about who we're exposing her to. And then, of course, at PTP, as Carolina said and Carol said, it's, you know, we do this work with young people.
Right.
You know, what is your role in the work for social justice? Because it's how do you think about yourself and others and not place one above the other.
So I find this to be particularly important. I mean, not only with the political climate that we're in right now, but I mean, for me personally, I'm biracial as well, just like your daughter, kind of. And for me, I always was very, very aware of racial matters because, you know, I literally had a African-American mother who grew up in the civil rights movement. Literally, my mom's from Alabama. So, like, she was marching with Martin Luther King, and her mom was the help. And, like, it was always very, you know, like, my mom definitely talked about that with me all the time. Like, and then my father is, you know, an immigrant, well, a child of immigrants. And I was very close to my grandparents who both were off the boat from, you know,
from Italy.
essentially Europe. From the Mediterranean, essentially. And so, like, my parents, to this day, just have very different views of, like, my father is kind of oblivious to racism. Like, he's always, like, very shocked when I tell him, like, I've experienced racism or that something's going on. He's like, wow, I can't believe people are like this. And then it's like, my mom is like, every motherfucker is like this. Yes. Like, the white man, no, you know what I mean? So, but I do feel like when you yourself have not been a victim of racism or really directly exposed to it, then you don't, it's hard for you to fathom that that exists. So, and I feel like, you know, I came out and I feel blessed in a way that my kids came out looking like me in terms of complexion and, you know, hair texture and all of that because there's less confusion. Like I would always, I mean, people used to always like say Mary's adopted because outwardly, I guess, if you just look at my parents, I don't look like either of them, right? Like my mom is very dark-skinned black and then my dad is redheaded and freckled and pale. So it was, I mean, again, if you look past that outwardly, then it's like, yeah, I'm a mixture. But, you know, I feel like with my kids, I didn't have to do that explaining really, or they didn't have, I mean, my daughter actually did tell me she had that experience, where like when in her early years, my dad would sometimes pick her up and people would kind of say like, that's not your grandfather or something like that. But you know, at least their direct parents, it's like, okay, it wasn't like a shocking experience, but they viewed themselves as just brown up until like my son right now. So my husband is Dominican and my son is having a hard time understanding that everyone isn't Dominican. Like he just assumes that everyone's Dominican and everyone speaks Spanish. So he goes up to people.
Depend where he is, you know, it's true.
Right. Well, and we live in Staten Island, which is not. I mean, there are now starting to become pockets. So like, yes, Dominicans on the rise, but for the most part, it's predominantly like Caucasian there with everything else is in pockets. So yeah, it's like kind of interesting in that way, like kind of explaining and then trying to explain to them where they sit in the social hierarchy of things, right? So I think that how I've approached it is I kind of let them come to me with questions and then I fill in the blanks from there. But I don't like, how do you kind of introduce these conversations to like a bunch of different kids who probably don't feel that way, right? Because I feel like if you're around other people that look like you, share your culture, and you don't, as kids, you don't really leave your cocoon that often, right? Like, you don't leave your hood, like you said.
Yeah.
So, like, are these kids aware that there really is an issue? I mean, I guess aside from maybe social media now, seeing people arguing over politics and whatever, racially charged comments, I guess. But I'm curious about that because I feel like I am raising my kids in a place where they clearly see that they're different. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I've kind of let that conversation come to me as it happens. Yeah. But I feel like, what if we were somewhere where everyone looked like us and was just like us? Would we be having these conversations?
Well, it's interesting because, like, I've been involved with your organization at different I was once trying to, like, let me see if I can act. And
she was in one of our adult programs.
Oh, hell no. Yeah. I did not know this.
Oh, yeah.
It was literally low key.
Carol's an actress.
She was amazing.
My daughter's been in the program. And then I was interviewed recently by some of your teen kids as a teen mom, because they were just curious to kind of hear from a teen mom, like, what was the experience like? And it was so, like, their questions, I left there, like, pretty sure. I'm like, you know what? We're in good hands if this is the future. Yeah. Because they were so great. They were like, oh, and do you still love him? Like, about my husband, and like, how was it? Did you stay up and I was like, it was hard. Like, I was very real. I felt like I could be real with them, and they were just, so I kind of like, when I think of like how you can introduce things like that, I mean, I feel like the way you guys do it, I mean, you can speak more to it, but it is important to kind of, I think, and I'm kind of countering what you're saying, which is just kind of let it come to you, but to really go to it, I think, and not be afraid to go to it, because I think it's going to come to them eventually, and I feel like it would rather come to it from us rather than from random social media, like you said.
Yeah. Like in a proactive way.
Yeah.
And it is, but I totally hear, it is that balance, right? And we've had a lot of conversations at PTP about it, like, and me personally as a mom, like, what is the role? How do we empower with the information? But also, you know, not over bombard the information. So one way is through stories and books. There's amazing writers who not explicitly are talking about oppression, but through the storytelling there. So right now, actually my daughter is in PTP this semester, which is awesome. And they're using Lola, how's it called? Island Born, you know?
Is that Julia Alvarez?
No, that's Junot Diaz.
Oh, Junot Diaz.
Oh, wow. Yeah. And that's my favorite author.
I know. I love him.
Okay.
He's amazing.
Yeah.
And his children's book is beautiful. It's set in the Heights, and the storytelling and the imagery, the illustrator, I forget, Leo Espinosa, I think, is the illustrator, is beautiful work. And it's about a young child who doesn't remember where she's from, but because she came as a baby, and rediscovering her culture by just talking to the neighborhood. So, like, in the book, there's the woman who sells empanadas in the corner, and you know, they're just talking about like all the things, and then it comes to the moment of talking about the history of DR, of like, but there's also that monster.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
So then you touch it, and then
the
colorism,
women,
exactly, and Trujillo, and then how women were put. You know, so there's a lot of layers, which as an adult you see, and kids maybe see it at a different place. Yeah. But I love that, you know, Emma Lucia, my daughter, walks out of school, and there's the guy who she buys empanadas from every day.
Oh yeah, in the corner.
You know, in the corner. But I think even within our own system, or like if you are in a neighborhood where it is predominantly, you know, kids of color, predominantly Dominican, I think more so because there is, as you said, deep colorism in Latino communities.
Of course, yeah.
And we encounter that with our kids, or I've even like, but I'm not black, or but I'm not brown, but I'm, you know, but then when they're little, we're like, well, let's talk about that, you know? And I think it's like understanding what does the implications are, but then when they're in middle school, then they're having these conversations of why it's important to say, like the census is coming up now. Like, how do we as Latino, unfortunately, is not considered a race.
Right.
It's an ethnicity. And thankfully, there is now a line which didn't exist in 2010 of there are you of Hispanic Latino heritage.
Right.
But then in the race question, like, let's educate ourselves on what we're going to say, because that impacts. If you're going to put white, first of all, I know you have your things and you think you're white, but you're not. Second of all, that means something in the census, right? You're now giving, you know, you're not saying we as a representative or our elected official should represent that however person, you know? So I think it's like you get to those deeper levels there, but you start with all the, you know, these amazing books of
I gotta order this book now.
Yeah, Island Born. It's amazing.
But
Yeah,
since
we did the audiobook.
Really? Yeah, no, I want to. But I feel like this seems
Oh.
like it probably would be a beautiful visual book, right? Like I'm just envisioning
Oh yeah,
it.
it is very beautiful.
Yeah.
It is. He did a great job on
Fire
it.
great.
escapes,
Yeah.
the schools,
Yeah.
it's based in Luperon
Yeah.
High School.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, how do you tell your kids to identify because they are mixed, right? Like I feel like
Yeah.
that's just it's a crazy conversation to have.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're Dominican.
Right.
And they say they're Dominican. And sometimes my husband's family is like, well, I mean, they also are Irish. So I was like, they're not Irish.
Right.
They're white. I know part of them is white, And it's like a big thing. So my husband we did it together. And
The ancestry thing?
An anti-racist training.
Oh. Okay.
But also ancestry. Because I think, speaking about being a biracial, and I think at Emma Lucia, all of our staff at People's Theater Project does it. Mm-hmm. With People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, an amazing organization based out of New Orleans that does this training all over the country. And it's really like an understanding and undoing racism. And I think as a biracial couple, it's been extremely, and he's also the co-founder. So we work together at People's Theater Project. He's the managing director and does an amazing job, has been integral in the success of the organization and growth. But,
Shout
it is
out to
very
Bob.
Shout out to Bob. I mean, Bob.
Yeah.
But like in thinking of like when you mentioned your father's, so I think there is when you're completely different backgrounds and cultures.
Yeah.
So, I mean, having that conversation has guided, having that experience together has guided a lot of how we engage with one another and see things.
Right.
And identity for my kids is, I mean, they say they are Dominican, but I've noticed now that I'm a Lucia, yo soy dominicano, is like what they say. And Lucia says, I am half, I'm white and Dominican.
Right.
Or I am a New Yorker.
Okay.
And Dominican. I'm U.S. and Dominican. I was like, I don't like them saying American because I have issues with like the term. It's like America's a continent, not just a country, but like a U.S. person.
Right. Well, it's funny because my husband is a citizen, but he was born in DR and still considers himself very much Dominican. And like there are certain things that like say when my daughter like wants to go sleep over somewhere, he's like, no, that's what Americans do. And it's like, well, we're American and we do sleepovers. Sorry. Like, so there are some cultural differences that, like kind of follow through.
Yeah.
I
hear that.
Like, what is this? Like, so... I mean, I feel like how my parents explained it to me was like, look, you have two parents. It took both of us to make you. So you're black and you're white, and you should not say one or the other. Like, you're biracial. Yeah. And, I don't know, through the years and kind of going through my own heartbreaks, and I'm feeling like I'm about to get emotional. And I know. I'm really trying not to. Kind of the world sort of made me feel like I'm black, though. First and foremost, like I feel like my blackness enters the room with me. And again, this is an issue, I guess, of colorism and not necessarily of heritage or ethnicity. But I feel like when people see me, they see me as a black woman first. So I feel like I'm a black biracial woman, if that makes sense. Yeah. And listen, like I grew up with very close to my father's family. My customs and traditions are very Sicilian. But at the end of the day, I feel like in America, at least, you are judged based off of how you look. Yeah. So, and I mean, I had this conversation with my parents recently, and my father was like extremely offended and annoyed by it. And I was like, look, I'm not denying you by saying that. Like, you're my dad. And I mean, mind you, I grew up having a very Italian name. Like, I had my dad's last name, so the whole nine. But I also felt like when people would see me and hear my name, they would expect me to look differently. So kind of going through that sort of, I don't know, disappointment, I think is kind of the word. You sort of tend to like embrace what has embraced you, if that makes sense, right? Yeah. It's kind of like Obama, how he would never really, and I'm not trying to get political right now, I promise. But I mean, when it comes to like labeling yourself racially. I mean, technically he's biracial, and everyone would be like, he's the first black president. And it's like, well, yes, he is, but he's also biracial. And that is its own experience, being biracial.
It totally
and
is.
especially in his case, his mom was white. Like, you know, so customs are different, you know. And your upbringing is very different, I feel, in that way. But and I loved it, he would kind of be like, whatever you want to call me is fine. Like, and I kind of feel like that at this point as well. It's like, you know what? I am whatever you say I am, because I know who my parents are. I know what I am, but I also know the experience I went through in this country as a result of what I look like.
Yes,
so,
yes.
yeah. So I don't know. I don't know if as your kids grow, they probably, I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, but if they look more on the white end of things, I think it's even more important for you to instill that Dominicanism, because then they wouldn't have that experience by osmosis or through experiences without you drilling that in. So, yeah, I don't know. And then I know, Carol, you had told me that at one point your daughter was like, yeah, I'm just black.
I mean, she still does.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, and it's because she's never quite felt like she has the curly hair.
But she has some curly hair.
No, I know. And I think she looks Dominican.
Yes.
But I guess just kind of growing up, I don't know if it was because of growing up in Inwood, where she went to a school where it was like a few Dominicans and a few whites and not so many. It's interesting, but she really just kind of relates to being more black, her blackness. And like her friends are all like, I mean, she doesn't have any Dominican friends or like any Spanish speaking friends. She has one, but most of them. And even like, well, I've highlighted this before, like when Max was born, because of what Lulu kind of has felt and like her own kind of not knowing where she fits in, even though she's super, I'm like, you're purely Dominican. Like there's no.
Yeah.
And it's but with Max, like because he was light skinned, I'm like, oh, he's a light skinned Dominican. Like it was kind of like I felt sort of more of a relief, because I'm like, oh, maybe he's not gonna have that much of like an issue in terms of kind of figuring out where he might land. Yeah, because if a bunch of Dominicans see him and he's lighter skinned, it's like, oh, okay, he's one of us. Whereas with Lulu, it's like, wait, are you? Like, what could you be? And so I don't know.
It's great. Like, I don't know. Again, I'm an outsider with that. I just feel like in your case, you're all countrymen, or whatever the word would be. So it just always seems so ridiculous to me that it's like, whether you're light, dark, whatever the fuck, you know, you're from the same country, so that's what you are. You know what I mean?
I know.
Like with the American experience of being black, it's so different, because it's like, you know, we were a part of a diaspora. Like, you know what I mean? So none of us really, I think that's part of where like the lack of black unity comes from, because it's like, really the only differentiation was complexion. If you were lighter, you were treated better by the slave master, and if you were darker,
well, it's the same in Latin America and the Caribbean. So you have that same structure,
right?
And you know, even now more so, I think you kind of have like this whole Afro-Latino kind of you know, movement coming up, where a lot of people move into that. Like Lulu's actually relating more to that. Like she calls herself Afro-Latina.
Okay.
So it's like giving them labels. Those labels, I think, even though they're still kind of up and coming, are important for kids like that and for people like that. Like we're kind of learning to really kind of undo, I think, a lot of the issues that we grew up with, that we felt uncomfortable with. We're like, wait, this doesn't quite feel right. And now we're kind of getting the terminology, I think, to really kind of be able to box that in a way, or give it a place, give it a home.
So go ahead. You want to?
Well, just think like the you know, I appreciate you sharing your own experience. And I think like with Emma Lucia, with both of my kids, you know, I think, and we've mentioned, it's interesting because a lot of, in the building where we live, a lot of our close friends in the building are all biracial couples.
So you're telling me I need to move there? Give me the address after this.
It's like, I know. It's pretty great. But it's like, this is the future, right? This is a lot of the future, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of Emma Lucia's closest friends are biracial and bicultural. So that is definitely a term that we, you know, I am, you know, like she knows, and we're like, we're both things, or both things are true.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you saying, because I think that's the reason that I push so much the Dominican, because, you know, when she walks into a room, that part of her is not seen by
Yeah,
society.
right.
And well, until she turns around and talks to me in Spanish.
Yeah.
And, like Bob, when he takes her to school on the bus and he's like, people always stare like, wow.
Yeah.
And then talk like, better,
Because
how
Bob speaks Spanish.
he
little
speaks,
bit.
yeah, he does speak Spanish, not fluently. Like definitely Marcos, who's 3.5, speaks more than him, and he has to be like, "What'd you say?"
Yeah.
But it is, so I think that's why pushing it now, because eventually the world is going to dictate,
Right.
which is why I think I love that you write that. I have it on my fridge, that like you may see this, but you don't see that. So hopefully she doesn't. I mean, I won't let her forget.
No.
Like, you have Dominican. Like there's some things that come out.
Yeah.
Of how things are done. But I remind her quickly.
I mean, I think that confuses my son too, actually, because like I've embraced Dominican culture because I've been with my husband forever. So it's like my husband speaks Spanish to me. We dance all the time. Like, so my son is like, "How are you not Dominican? Like, I don't understand it." And I'm like, I don't know. But yeah. So aside from basically instilling a sense of like who they are, how do you really teach kids to be activists? Because I'm kind of struggling with that right now. Like, I feel like this Gen Z has so much potential because they don't take shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I do feel like what I'm seeing, at least amongst my daughter and a lot of her friends, and my daughter is 17. She just turned 17.
Oh,
so
wow.
right. Is laziness, or I don't know. I mean, I'm not even trying to. The thing is this. They have the ability that we didn't have to kind of mobilize and start movements with social media and how technologically savvy they are, and the basically the technology that they have available. And when they find causes that they get behind, they're gung-ho. Like, so how do we teach them to use these tools to actually make a change or be the change that we couldn't be, right?
Yeah.
Like, because that's how I'm thinking now. In the midst of like all of the chaos that we're in, it's like we have to really make sure that
they got it.
Right. I mean,
we need them.
My daughter's a junior, and a lot of kids in her class are actually turning 18, or at least the class in front of her. They're going to be able to vote. So how do
we just got our ballot to register Lulu.
Right, because she's 18.
Yeah, she's 18. Yeah, she's very excited.
So she'll be voting in November?
She'll be voting. She's voting in the primaries, and then she's going to vote in November too.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
she's been like with her, we've watched a lot of the debates.
Okay.
And I actually share with her like articles on like the different and it's funny because I try not to be like kind of way in too much, just to kind of see what but it's very hard for me not to.
Yeah.
Like there's just one or two candidates that I'm like, no.
I'm just gonna leave that.
Yeah, I mean, if you follow me on Twitter, you should know which one of them is. I was literally having a heart attack this past debate. Anyway, so
listen, if you saw my IG story today, it's like, what's going on? Anyway, carry on.
But I do try, and I even told her, I was like, look, if you want to register Republican, like, look at what's there. Like, I try not to be, and I know.
You're trying not to sway her.
I'm trying not to sway
I'm
her.
not that.
Oh, no, but
very
luckily,
un-Dominican of you.
She's
I
I'm swaying.
Yeah,
Well, it's funny because when I did mention that, she's like, hell no. Like, I'm like, okay.
But that's
great.
I
tried.
No, that's great that you were like,
but at least she has an opinion. I mean, I just feel like a lot, like my daughter also is very opinionated, thank goodness. And I think it is as a result of like hanging out with me all of these years and kind of absorbing some of that. But the same way as you, I encourage her to think for herself, even if it's not the way that I think. But so far, so good. We're kind of aligned. But I find that a lot of her friends, like I've been asking, like, some of the people who are close to her who are now 18, and I'm like, hey, you're going to vote, and then they just seem uninspired. Yeah. So that has me concerned, and that makes me feel like, how do we teach them to take a stand, to be active? I mean, voting is like, I guess, the first step, but what else can they do, right? Like,
I think part of the thing is like we need to let our young people know that they matter. I mean, I think part of it is like young people matter and their voice matters.
Yeah.
And I think is like there's so many young leaders, but like we erase them from history, right? Yeah, before Rosa Parks was Claudette Colvin, right? Who sat on the bus. Like, why is that not part of the stories that we're telling, right?
Yeah.
Nothing against, I love Rosa Parks, but like, I mean,
Yes.
young people have been leading movements forever in the history
They
of
were the ones that
humanity.
started the whole bus boycotting and things like that during the civil
Yes.
rights. It was really young, young people who led it. But we really don't talk about that. How they were very, very young.
Yeah, they were so so many movements. So I think part of the thing is like letting like if we let our young people know, that's something definitely we're trying to do at PTP is your voice matters and has an impact and demand that it's heard. So now let's talk about strategies, how you do that. Do you write a piece of paper? Do you show up to an elected official's office and say, this is important to me? Gather signatures from all of your friends on social media. It's easy to do, but I think they are creative in finding the solutions and finding tactics. But I think the first step is, I think there is a bit of it doesn't matter because which is so often true. Society plays a thing of you're just a kid, you don't matter. Well, actually, we just need to change that narrative. Just a kid. One of the reasons I love theater and art is like the power of imagination.
Yeah.
Something doesn't exist, but it does in your brain. And that's like the first step towards creating it, right? I mean, think of like just even social issues or things, you need to imagine it differently.
Yeah.
And then you can do it. So, like, the power of creativity and imagination is extreme. I mean, we can't underestimate that.
Well, I can only imagine how inspired the kids must be with you because right now I'm feeling like I can imagine some shit.
Like we're about to like set up some like signs and go.
I'm like, yes, let's go to DC right now. But yeah.
And like some of my former students, who are now in college and graduating college and doing peace and doing finance and doing like all these things. And, my birthday was recently and it was amazing to get.
Are you an Aquarius?
I am an Aquarius.
Yes, girl. Yes. Me too. When was your birthday?
February 5th.
I'm the 3rd.
Yeah.
I'm surrounded by Aquarius.
Yes, poor you, Carol. Yeah.
You're not Aquarius?
No, she's a Taurus.
She's looking at me like, oh, I feel bad for you.
It's all right, everyone can't be great. Everyone can't be great.
We're the best.
Well, I mean, you guys are like trailblazers in what you do.
Yeah.
And I can definitely see why PTP is a success.
Yeah. And for what it's worth, Taurus is not to bring it on back there, but you guys ground us out, and we do need that.
Yes,
so
yes. We need whatever Bob is probably a Taurus. If that's what.
When's his birthday? We can tell you.
April 27.
Oh shit, he is a Taurus. And so is my husband. He's May 15th. I know.
Yes,
this is crazy.
Oh my God.
Yes.
That's hilarious.
I know. This really is. Anyway, I feel like PTP should really be traveling to different schools. Like you, I mean, I don't know what you're doing, but I really feel like making a suggestion. I feel like everybody, I'm like on board with this, like right now, totally.
Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do. We're growing, like slow and steady. And we actually, there was a period a few years ago where like the Department of Education that works with immigrant students with English language learners saw what we were doing uptown and was like, go all over. And we did. And at that point, I had a baby. And it was just like Bob and myself running this thing. So
I still don't know how you were doing it.
It was 32 schools across the city, all over not Staten Island.
I know, but we
everywhere
need you
else.
there.
I know.
Honestly.
But now but then we decided to like refocus and come back uptown. But now we're really like, okay, now that we've grounded, now that we know the work, we know the impact, we're ready to start slowly growing. So, I mean, we're going to schools that are ready for the work too, but the kids are always ready. They say they're not, and we mostly work with middle schoolers.
They're so amazing. Well, the plays they come up with, like, they're so creative. They come up, I mean, they talk about immigration, like they know the immigration work. They know, like,
that's great. We should show
like
them.
things that are happening in their communities. It's like you think they don't know, but they know so much. It's like incredible.
Well, that was going to be my next question. How early is it when you should start having these conversations with your kids, like about what's going on in the world, right? Isn't that kind of how it starts? Like, again, I feel like, and maybe my approach has been wrong, I don't know, but I've been taking it as it comes to me instead of like force feeding it like, this is what's happening right now. I mean, with my daughter, I'm a little more, true little side funny story, right? We went to a historically black colleges and university, I can never remember what that, HBCU fair. And, we were going to every table, talking to every representative, and one of them was asked Bree, my daughter, do you know who Thurgood Marshall is? Like basically because I guess he was an alma mater of their school. And Bree did not fucking know. And I was like, I have failed as a parent. Like, so now, Black History Month just was upon us. I literally was forcing her to watch like every bit of programming that I could come on, and she was just like insert stars in eyes, like. But yeah, I mean, again, I feel like here's another thing, right? And then you jump in. I feel like schools have lost all their program. Like when I was a kid, it was a thing, and now it's just nothing.
Well, it's funny because with Lulu, I actually do the same. Like I would drill her, and her school actually does the opposite. Like they focus a lot on like Black history and understanding like. Because they have a lot of students who are white, understand like they talk a lot about privilege. They talk about creating safe spaces.
Okay.
And like her school, like she recently, I was like, oh, it's Black History Month, and I was like, I try to create like activities for us to do around the house, and she was like, ugh, like I don't want to hear about this anymore. And I'm like, what do you mean?
Like listen, girl, if you want to say you Black, then you better know some Black.
You need to embrace this shit. But then and then when I really saw like the books they assigned her during the summer were mostly about learning Black history and like the history of Blackness in the U.S. Like it was really like throughout her 4 years, it was drilled, really. So I think it matters with the schools. And I think it also matters, like, with us. Like, I've always read, even now I read to Max, like, books that have Black characters. And there are tools for us to use where we can kind of do the work without really pushing it on them. Visiting museums, there's so many like landmarks and houses in Harlem and things like that. That you can slowly start teaching them. So that's kind of like been my route. But it's been hard for me because I don't even know, like for me, I'm just a learner as much as they are in a sense. So it's kind of like, I don't know.
And I think it's fine to say that. I mean, I think that's part of the thing. I mean, and especially when it comes to gender, that's a big conversation. And it's there's so much work to be done for equity in that space. And we have, we've had that conversation. I was like, and I make mistakes sometimes, you know, and but she knows, we've had conversations like when she was, so I guess it was, to answer your question, like maybe when she was like 3, we asked, do you think you're a girl or a boy? And she's like, Mommy, but I have a vagina. I was like, you do, but there are some people who have vaginas and are boys. And having, which, of course, my Dominican parents are flipping out.
I was going to say, that went over really well.
But but then when Marcos came about, and Marcos loves wearing tutus and loves wearing dresses and loves painting his nails, and she's like, maybe Marcos is like, but he's like, I'm a boy. I just like dresses, I was like, yeah, and that's fine, too. But, like, she's like, I know she's very girly. My kid is very dramatic. So she's like, no, Mommy, I'm not. But she asked, like when I'm going to a wedding, is it 2 boys or 2 girls? Or is it 2 or whatever? Or is it, like I love, but it's about exposing, even if it's uncomfortable, be like, I'm still learning too. It's good to too, because it wasn't like that when I was growing up, or it wasn't as vocal. But these, it's just, so I think there are books that talk about gender and conversation.
And the thing is, I think what's important.
Julianne is a Mermaid is one of my favorites.
I keep hearing about it. I'm going to get it today. Yes, I've heard so many people have recommended it. A friend of mine actually just texted me. She's like, Mino Marcos would love this book.
Yeah, it is such a beautiful. So it lightly touches on the issue of gender, but like it's very bold in it as well. And beautiful. The colors, the word, is one of my favorite books. It's such a great story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that what's important is that even when we're discussing matters of race, gender, whatever, social activism, I think that it's important to know that kids are not born knowing that one thing is right and one thing is wrong. And it's really about us giving them the freedom to feel like whatever's okay. And yeah, I mean, I definitely have always tried to do that with my kids too. I'm very much like live and let live and, what have you. And so, I mean, I didn't necessarily ask them if they thought they were a boy or a girl. But, I'm like, listen, if other people think they're boys and girls or whatever, then that's...
You respect them.
And exactly. It is what it is. And
it's like, it's amazing. So one of the reasons, like, I've seen my kid be an activist, she identifies as an activist. We were sitting around the table, dinner. My parents were here from DR visiting, and I was going to go get a manicure because I needed one. And Emma's like... And I was like, I'm going to see it. Do you want to come with me? Because I was going to go with my mom. She's like, yeah. And Marco's like, my son goes, I want to go too. And my father was like, no, in Spanish. But he was like, the boys cannot, cannot do that. And my mom kind of said it. And then I started kind of bantering, Papi, pero por qué? Like whatever. He can do whatever he wants. It's just, that means nothing. He's just wants to paint colorful nails. He wants to be with like his mom, you know? So I started, and then I just kind of, I just got like angry mode, and then whatever. And we kept eating. And Emma Lucia goes, Güelo, I see that you don't think it's fine for Marcos to do that, but boys can do anything girls can.
Wow.
And then she turns around to her baby brother and goes, Marcos, tú puedes venir con nosotros. You can come with us. And I was like tearing. I was like, the fact that she's like, and they were silent in that moment, but he's like, I see the compassionate way that she would, because it was, the way that I did it was a bad tactic. I just wanted to do like, but she's like, I see that you think, but that is not what we believe. Yeah. And boys can do anything. Marcos, you come with us. Yeah. I was just like, and I told her after, I was like, I'm getting emotional thinking about it. I was like, I'm so proud of you, the way that you respected your elders, because is something cultural. Like you're not going to yell at them like I did. Right.
Don't do what your mom just did to me.
Yeah, exactly. But she's like, she's going to be a lot better and stronger and more effective.
Right.
Than I am.
Yeah. Well, it's the truth. I mean, I've gone through similar situations where my mom is Southern and extremely like homophobic and closed-minded and a lot of things. And Bree is constantly correcting her whenever she... I mean, I can't say Bree's as respectful as you just described, but she'll be like, Mima, please, give me a break. Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, and I think that's really the proof in the pudding that we've done our job in raising activists. I mean, for lack of a better word. But
all those little moments add up. I think we also have this idea that it's a scary big word. Activist means you must do this, and that. I mean, if you're speaking up for others, that's how we define it at PTP. An activist is someone who uses their voice to speak for themselves and for others. Punto. You know what I mean? It's not bigger than that. That can expand to mean so much, and it can really be saying, Mima, give me a break. She is speaking up for someone beyond her, and that's activism, right? That's speaking up, using your voice for somebody else, right? Yeah. And we speak a lot about that. Of course, my 3-year-old is 3, so he's just me in this moment in his life. Right. So we're working on it.
We'll get him there.
Yeah, we'll get him
He's
there.
Next.
Exactly.
That's great. Yeah. Well, we could continue talking all day, but we got to go get those kids now. So, So why don't you tell everyone where they can look up PTP, where they can find you, social media handles, all that good stuff.
Yes. So you can find me on social media at Mino Lora. So Mino is my nickname. Maria del Camino is my full name.
Wow.
But hence Mino as my nickname, Mino, Lora, Lora. So you can find me on social media there. And then People's Theater Project. So ptp.nyc or peoplestheaterproject.org. You can find all the information for our programs. We right now have a show that's about to go on tour, created by our youth ensemble. So they're all 17 to 23. It's called The Future Is Now, and it's about the census. Wow. So we're touring across the city to schools and cultural venues. All performances are free, and they're followed by a workshop and people from Northern Manhattan Improvement Corporations and other organizations that are going to have people helping you fill out the census right there. That's activism right there. Yeah. And then we also have our gala, which I'll do a shout out just in case.
Yes.
Are we invited?
Yes. Come and join us.
And join us. I want to wear a ball gown.
Do it. It's not that fancy of a gala, but you can wear a ball gown.
I'm extra. Totally right. Everyone knows this. So I will be there looking like Mariah. Continue.
Yes. And we're honoring Lin-Manuel Miranda and the Miranda family. So it's going to be a fun time. I know. I love him too. That whole family is like a gem in Uptown crew for sure. And to raise the funds to be able to continue to do this amazing work with 1,000 young people.
That's great. Yeah. We need you. So please keep going.
Thank you.
Carol, let them know where they can find you.
Hey, Carolina. Wait, no, that's not my handle.
No. Why do I know your shit better than you?
C_Pichardo.
I love how we're getting spicy and ethnic today. Well, I'm Miss Mary Almonte, if we're going to go there. On all social platforms. And we are at Young Urban Moms.
Yay. Everywhere. Check us out.
Yes.
Yay.
What's Young Urban Moms in Spanish?
Madres
jo-
urbanas. Jóvenes urbanas.
Madres jóvenes urbanas.
Yes, that's us.
Yes.
Bye, y'all.
Later.
Yay.
We're out. Yay.
That was dope.
I know.
Awesome.
Fluid.
Yeah.